Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hive Jive. We hope that you are doing fantastic. I am joined again by Miss Nathalie. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing fantastic. Howdy, howdy, everybody. Beekeeping family. So happy to have you back.
Yeah, and we are joined today by a very special guest, somebody who you should know very well, has been a repeat offender on the show, per se, quote unquote, in the best way. One of our fan favorites, Miss Tara Chapman from Two Hives, honey. Welcome back to the Hive Jive, Tara.
Hi, so happy to be here again. It's been so long.
It has been a very long minute, a hot minute, as the kids say these days. It's been a hot minute. Oh, wait,
Yes,
no, that's all changed. I think that was a generation before. See, I'm so out of date.
dating yourself, man.
I try to keep up the best that I can. So, speaking of generations, we were talking here before we got started. I have not seen you since I left Texas. And the last event that I would have seen you at, you were absent from because you were in the process of giving birth to your son, and you are now a beekeeping mama, and you've got a little baby beekeeper on the way.
I
You
do.
got
I
another one
do.
on the way?
No, I do not. No, no.
Oh.
Not on the way
No,
like
no.
that. Not on
Just
the
the
way as in
one.
like again. On the way as in like a baby beekeeper going up through the ranks. He's in his
Yeah.
apprentice phase.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, he was a bit of a late walker. But he was in a bee suit as soon as he could walk, which was at 18 months. And he loves the bees. He helps with bee pickup days. So new pickup days, he loves to stand out there and every beekeeper that comes up, he'll yell, "You gotta look for the eggs. You gotta look for the eggs." Uh, he demands his own hive tool. He loves a smoker. Yeah, he's great. Texas Co-op Power Magazine came out for a little photo shoot last weekend, and I didn't have childcare because my husband was out of town, and I was like, oh, I really don't want to have to get a sitter. And so I thought, well, so they showed up, and I was like, I thought it'd be so fun if we put my son out there. It can make it accessible. Look at this kid's not even 3. Look at him. This is nothing to be scared of. And so I sold that lemon as a lemonade. And then I told the photographer, please do not print these photos where his tiny little 2-year-old hands are gloveless in this beehive. I do not want this to be on the internet where people can scream at me in all caps. So please don't do that. But
Yeah,
anything else?
good call. Good call. Only the photos that don't show that.
Yeah. The one
Well,
of
that's
being a
awesome.
responsible parent. Yeah, no, he loves the
So,
bees.
how, I mean, that is actually a great example of any life for any parent, especially when they're younger and you have all these things that come up last minute and all these challenges, but you still have a job to do, you still got a life to run and all this other stuff. And in your case, you've got this big business. So, how has it been navigating that? Like, I'm sure that's probably not the first time that you're like, all right, buddy, guess you're going with mom to work today.
It has been very hard. The transition has been very hard for me. I was not planning to have children, and I would like to think maybe I would have been better prepared had I planned it. But you're talking about February 2021. Yeah, 2021. The storm has just hit Texas, right? The power and the water have gone out. I cannot work for the first time in ever. And I'm laying in bed and I'm just thinking, I feel really sick. All the screws don't feel like they're screwed in up top. Like I just felt off. And
Something was wrong. Yeah, out of
I
place.
sat up and I thought, oh my God, I'm pregnant. I'm
Oh
pregnant.
no.
And I went downstairs and I told my husband, who, marrying me was a bit of a concession because he wanted children. And I was like, that's not going to happen. We'd only been engaged for 3 months. And that was February. And, for those beekeepers that aren't in Texas, February is the start of bee season. And it was a particularly challenging start to the bee season, given that storm killed everything. It was a hard bee season, and we lost exponentially more hives than we normally would. And so not only was it like a big surprise, it was at the start of bee season. So, but what I learned later was that was actually the easy part, because I seriously worked bees until I was 32 weeks pregnant. And then I would go out, but I would go out with one of my beekeepers, when I would kind of dawdle and piddled around. And I was out there until 39 weeks just to basically keep myself busy. And that was fine because he was along for the ride. And I definitely remember like those few weeks after giving birth, it has taken me a long time, dare I say almost 3 years, to realize like I'm waving the white flag. I cannot do what I used to do. I can't be in bees 5 or 6 days a week, you know. But I remember those early days thinking like, can I put him in his car seat and like leave him in the car while I work bees, which sounds absolutely bananas now, but like that is literally what I was like, is that possible? I just need to get up for just like a minute, just like a minute. So it's been very hard. But you know, with challenges comes great opportunity and much, much, much joy with Atlas. We're very happy to have him, but it is, I will not lie, it's been rough for me. I've
Yeah,
learned a lot.
I remember seeing you in pretty much like the largest overalls that you could get that you could put on so you could still go out and do your bees while you were like full on like going to term pregnant out there still working the bees. And I was like, oh girl, that in Texas heat, like no.
Yeah, because that would have been like in August and September. So we were
Yeah.
harvesting, and I was like, you know, I gave birth in early October. So I was like 8-ish, 9 months pregnant at that point. Yeah, I had these men's extra large coveralls. And I remember the last day coming home and taking them off because I was like, I'm at 39 weeks. I'm going to give birth to this baby tomorrow. And then I went for 3 more weeks, had a 2-week-old inside of my stomach by the time I finally gave birth. And I unzipped these overalls, and you could see like an indentation of the zipper into my belly, and we joked he was going to come right out with like a
Just
zipper
gonna
down the front
unzip.
of his face. Yeah. And then again, like I thought that was the hard part. Like I was so naive about what it takes to raise a baby. I'll never forget at the Brenham Bee School, which is a big bee school in Texas that happens in March every year. You're both familiar. And so Atlas was 4 or 5 months at that point, and it was kind of my first big bee event off the ranch, and I was still nursing. So I'm pumping in the bee yards, like going out in the bee yards every day with pumps in the wearable pumps in my bra, pouring milk in, but like not super sanitary, like out in the bee yards, pouring milk in bottles with my little Yeti cooler. Like I was so unkind to myself. So I go to this bee school and I'm teaching, and like I can teach beekeeping in my sleep, right? It's second nature. I've been doing it for 10 years. And then there's a baby in the back of the room, and the baby starts crying. And it was my first moment of feeling that being totally pulled out of the moment and just dropped somewhere. Like I never experienced that before. So I start lactating, and I just am frozen and like cannot speak. And I was like, I'm sorry, I just need a minute. And I had to step aside and like compose myself. And then I had to tell the woman, I'm so sorry. I don't know that I can continue with that baby crying. And it was the first moment, one of the first moments that I was like, whoa, I'm in it. And this is different.
Yeah.
So
That is
That-
something obviously that would, I think, catch anybody off guard, and obviously something that I have never had to deal with. So, but yeah, that was gosh, man, more power to you on that one. That was a rough haul.
Trial
I
by
was,
fire. Yeah,
Trial
that's
by
I
fire, yeah.
really I really thought like, you know, I was so active and I was out working and out every day, super active. I mean, in fact, I think it came back to bite me later because Atlas doesn't want to sleep, and he wants to move constantly. And my midwife is like, you never stop. That baby is used to being tousled all day long. So he never slept, was never sleeping. Um, yeah, I mean, it's been a few years. I can say that.
Yeah. So he's gonna grow up and be his mama's little boy though. Doesn't want to stop, wants to be out there in the bees, get things done, gotta keep moving.
hardworking. Just go get
Oh
it.
yeah. He's a good helper. He loves to help. I'm gonna say it won't be long before he'll be leading tours. I really do believe that he'll be out there by 10, leading people out onto a tour.
So he can not only yell at them, look for the eggs, he can show them, look for the eggs, like right here, there they are.
Exactly.
That is awesome. Well, in the midst of all of this newfound parenting and the journey of that mixed in with your job and your beekeeping, you somehow managed to find the time for another new project. And
Another baby.
you have a new book that will be coming out, I think, release date in November, correct?
Yeah, November 5th is the official release date. Here it
Yeah.
is. Very excited. Yeah.
For the bees.
I actually, so those that subscribe to my newsletter know I've been signing my newsletters for the bees for 10 years. So it's a little homage to that. But it is a beekeeping book. It is a beekeeping book, and happy to share, like, there's a lot of beekeeping books out there. Like, why did I feel compelled to like insert myself into the space? But I actually started writing it before, well, I was pregnant, but didn't know I was pregnant. So I was teaching my apprenticeship class, which is a 50-hour immersive intensive beekeeping program. And I was pretty frustrated with the text out there. And so my assistant was like, you should write your own. And I'm Tara. Hello. So I was like, I'll totally write my own. And I wrote a third of the book by dedicating 3 hours every day in December and January. And then I learned I was pregnant. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. So I stopped that. All new projects, got the kibosh. And then UT Press, my publisher, called me in June. They had met a gentleman that I had traveled to Malawi with and did some beekeeping with over there, some service work and a little tourism stuff. And he was like, this girl has a crazy story. You got to meet this woman. So they called me, you know what story they wanted? They wanted that intel officer turns
Yeah.
beekeeper story. And I
How
was
did you
like,
go from the
yeah.
secret squirrel stuff over to beekeeping?
Yeah. And I was like, nah, I'm not writing that, but I'll write a beekeeping book. And in fact, I've already got a third of it written. So I sent them all my old newsletters and sent them some chapters and sold them on it. So I actually wrote the book in Atlas's first year. So again, the theme is that Tara is not very kind to herself because I chose to write a book during the year my son was born and he wasn't sleeping and I was breastfeeding and had a business and so forth.
Yeah, and lack of sleep and yeah.
Yeah. I
Insomnia,
mean,
insanity.
I go back and I read chapters and have read them many times. The writing of a book is quite the process. Whoa. But the first time I went back and read them, once it was bound and kind of all together, I thought, I don't remember writing a single word of this. It's such good writing. I don't remember any of it. Like someone could have plagiarized it and I would be like, I had no idea that someone stole my book.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Where'd they ever come up with that?
That's great. Yeah.
So
Wow.
what I have a question. So what are the strengths in the way your book differentiates itself? I realize you write fantastic newsletters. Your writing style is very approachable. What is the in the structure of the book or the value that it brings to beekeepers? How does it differentiate itself according to you? And also, how do non-beekeepers can relate? How can they relate as well?
Yeah. So, when I found there was a hole in the market, what I was frustrated with the books that are out there is that I find that books often tend to fall in one of two categories, beekeeping books. They tend to fall into the very heavy and dense index style book, right? Like very heavy, lots of information, so much, all the information, but that's not approachable for a new beekeeper. I mean, a lot of this stuff you got to go back and read 5 years after you're into it to even begin to process it, right? And then the other category that often books fall into is that they're fun and they're colorful and they've got bright pictures, but there's not as much substance there. And they certainly don't address the nuance that I think beekeeping, well, not that I think that you have to be able to understand to be a good beekeeper. And so I thought, can we not have substance and also have fun? And so, and I also have a very open philosophy in teaching, like I teach one way, but I want people to understand that there's oftentimes lots of ways to do something and everyone has to find what works for them and they are bees. And so I'm very proud of the book because it is very heavy on substance and very heavy on nuance. I mean, it's got like a 30-page index at the back, right? Which a lot of books don't have, which I did not write because I cannot do that tedious work. They hired someone to do that, but it's got this index and you can flip through, right? So the substance is there, but also it's very fun. I hired this illustrator that had done a mural in our shop at the Honey Ranch in our classroom. And it's so fun. And it's all about, it's got all these bees anthropomorphized, just very, very fun. And so what I did is I gave her a list of illustrations that I needed to be straight, meaning like they're conveying information. And then I put her in beekeeping classes and I said, I'd love to hear from you as a beginner what you found most fun and most interesting, and share your ideas with me for illustrations. So most of the illustrations that are not the straight, you know, I'm conveying information, but rather are here for fun, were actually conceptualized by Caroline. So for example, she had, for our nutrition chapter, she drafted a straight copy of the Lord's Supper, but with bees instead, with Queen as the Jesus. And on the table, it's got all the macronutrients that bees require, down to like Judas with the knife at her back. And later that comes into play when we talk about murder balling, right? You've got this like throwback. And so it's very, very fun. The illustrations are hilarious and laugh out loud. And I sprinkle in lots of fun stories throughout. And then the other thing that is different about this book than a lot of the books is it's extremely biology forward, meaning like we don't talk about beekeeping until you get to chapter 4, because if you don't understand biology and what bees do in the wild and nutrition, how do we talk about feeding bees if you don't understand nutrition, right? And when you go to a bee school, how many classes do you see on feeding bees? How do we know what to feed bees if you don't understand their nutritional needs? And if you don't understand that, you can't understand what they're missing and why, right? So it's very, very biology forward. And in fact, I had to fight very hard for that against in my peer review rounds. And I had to go through two peer reviewers in 2 rounds. And I fought hard for that. And it was really important to me that we address biology first.
That's very good. That is something that we harp on a lot. Natalie brings it up all the time,
All the
the
time.
biology of the bee. So that's great. But I love the concept of how the illustrations came about, because what better way than to put the artist in the thick of it and then be like, okay, now you've experienced it from a newbie perspective and you now know what we're talking about and what this looks like. How do you convey that into your artwork? How would you show this to somebody and try to get that message across? That's brilliant. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah, she did this one illustration. She really enjoyed uh all the ways, like the idea of like a queen failing and what happens after that. So she had this idea to do like 5 ways to kill a queen bee, you know, and so she's got like an illustrated murder ball. And like I tell a story in the book of being out with students and drowning a queen in a feeder, right? That story. And so she's got a little pool of water with like just a little crown, and you don't see the, you know, the idea is that she's somewhere down below. So it's very fun. I'm really proud of what she was able to do, and that they were mostly her ideas.
I love that. I am very much looking forward to getting to go through this and look at it. This is very cool.
Yeah, I can't wait
Yeah.
to get my hands on my copy as well. And I've seen the mural and it's really cute. So yeah.
Yeah,
That's
she's
awesome.
great. She's great. So by the way, if anyone is anywhere and like has a fun place for us to do a book signing, like Have Book will travel, and we're hoping to get, she lives in Florida, so I'm going to be doing some visits to Florida, and we're hoping at a few of the book signings there in Miami that she can be present, and our hope is to do some bee caricatures. So if you come in, you buy the book, you get your book signed, you also get to sit, and Caroline's going to caricaturize you
As a bee.
That's
from a bee.
cute. Yeah.
I love it. That's great. So there you go, everybody. If you are in a place where you think there would be a good place to host a book signing, reach out to Tara and let her know, and maybe she can add you guys to the stop. That sounds like a hoot. That would be just an absolute riot. Okay, so I'm going to transition here on you real quick, because you have been in this, like you said, you've been doing this as a profession for 10 years. You teach classes. You are like a master businesswoman. You've got all these different ideas constantly going, growing and involving your business itself. So, from your perspective, how do you currently feel about the state of beekeeping today? And do you, as this female led woman business owner, beekeeper, mama, do you still feel like we need more people to be getting into beekeeping? And if so, why? Two-part question.
Sure. With the current state of beekeeping, I mean, I'm very happy to have seen more women come into beekeeping. You know, here in Texas, we're the biggest beekeeping state in the nation. So I feel like we kind of set the tone. We set the trends. A lot of what happens here is going to affect the rest of the US, right? And, you know, when I started in beekeeping 12 years ago, like there was definitely women, but you've seen a lot more over the last 12 years. And I'm really happy because Two Hives has played a big role in that here in Central Texas. I think that seeing a woman at the helm makes it more accessible to other women, right? So really happy to see that, specifically on the business side too. Like there were definitely women managing and running companies, but there's so many more now, and I love to see more women involved, and I'm a big believer of like lifting other women up in this space. A lot of students have come through my classes and started like side hustles and full-time businesses, and I really, really love that. As far as like, do we need to see more beekeepers? I mean, listen, I'm not going to gatekeep. If this is something that's fulfilling to someone, I'm excited for them to come in, as long as those folks come in with the understanding that this is a lifelong journey of learning, right? Like we need to constantly be learning. I get real bummed when I see beekeepers come in and they kind of expect you throw a hive out back and then it's going to magically produce honey through this flow hive, right? I really want people in the space with me who are like excited about learning and the value, and think the learning is what's fun. And then, you know, hopefully the honey will come later. And I also just hope that as more people get into beekeeping, more people also start to take notice of native bees. We do a lot of work with that at Two Hives because honeybees is what makes me my money. I'm here in San Antonio today because I did a native bee talk to a garden club. That's how we make our money, but I'm passionate about drawing more people in to learn more about our native bees. And I don't buy into this, let's pit one species against the other. I don't think that's helpful to anybody. We are not the ones, we are not the problem, right? There's so many people out there that could care less about any of it. They're the ones we need to, you know, be coming at. And so I just hope that people are coming into this with an appreciation for the ecology and other pollinator species as well.
Yeah, and I can recognize the rise of women in beekeeping in in Texas in general. I mean, having led the bee clubs and things, I've seen the proportion of women really changing through, and like you, through our business, through our apprenticeships, we see the same thing. There's a large proportion of women coming down the pipeline, and they're getting younger and younger, by the way. That's the other thing. There's a rejuvenation, and the people that are retired and you know, fading into the twilight are kind of leaving place to something more diverse, more generationally young. And it's really fun to see that. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because we've had people going through our apprenticeship as well, starting businesses. And I think that's what's important, is really kind of like getting people to focus on not only the bees, but what they can do with the bees. In some instances, they can really make a living, especially in Central Texas. So I think it's definitely something we're looking at as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've also, as of late, we've been also focused on like my classes are 80 to 90% women. Like we get excited when women come in the room because, you know, my staff, I have 8 staff and 7 of the 8 are women. We've got 1 guy, and I'm like, Jared, I talk about you all the time. I tell everyone about you. No one forgets about you. So we feel like we've done a lot there. And now we've been focusing on how do we get more diversity into beekeeping. And so we've been partnering with Texas State, and we've been working with them as a sub on grants from the USDA to bring in veterans and people of color. And so we actually, John, as of now, still have more spots available for our intro courses for those groups. And so I can share that link with you, and you can post it in the notes if you want. And we're hoping to we've applied for a grant with Texas State to bring this program to West Texas, where we'd be able to bring this to Native American communities. So we're hoping to do more in the area of diversity. We've done a good job, but I'd like to do more as well.
By the way, kudos to the USDA and their grants, because they're doing the same thing at Texas. I'm sorry, University of Texas in San Antonio, UTSA, with Dr. Osterk. I always love to give him a shout out. It's an amazing program, and the same thing. They're teaching underserved communities, and especially the young ones, to get into the agricultural business. And that's where we teach we're doing the same thing basically under the $2.9 million grant over there. And so I think there's a great push, and I think it's amazing that there's universities are getting into the game to foster diversity in the world of beekeeping. I think it's amazing.
That is very cool. So you mentioned something a couple of times in there that the state of Texas is, like this mega bee thing. We mentioned some statistics on here at one point in time that kind of blew my mind, but at any given point in time, and I'm going to quote these are very rough, so don't murder me over the numbers being wrong. It's like over 8,000 colonies of bees in the state of Texas at any given point in time, which is more than every southern US state combined at that same point in
Wow.
time. And I was like, holy crap. And so for anybody like the three of us that all got started right there in the heart of Texas, that's just how it was. It was a way of life. It was a thing. But I guarantee you, when you leave the state of Texas, it is culture shock. You're like, the beekeeping is not as cohesive. Like the people are completely different in the way that they interact. There's not as many of them out there. It's a real shock to the system if that's where you came up through the whole process, for sure.
I believe it. I mean, having just come off of one of the bigger bee schools this past weekend, and like where you go and it's so fun to see newbies, but you're also seeing your 20, 30 guys and gals that have been in it for years, and we all kind of go to teach, but also to hang out and share stories and all that stuff. I believe that leaving Texas and trying to get into a bee community must be just a whole different world.
It is. It is.
I would
It's
think that
upside down.
California, I would think that California's got to be the second. I was actually talking about this today. Do you have any idea? I was telling this to this group this morning, and I was thinking, I bet California's got to, I mean, just by sheer size and the fact that you've got all the pollination out there, it's got to be number 2 in terms of like number of beekeepers, I would think.
I think actually, and I could be wrong on this, but I think
Georgia?
it's actually Georgia, South Carolina,
Yeah.
North Carolina, that region.
Yeah.
They have one of the largest state memberships for a state association out there. That's something that Blake Shook and I were talking about at one point in time, and it completely blew my mind because, like you, I would think, oh, well, California, they've got a whole lot.
Right.
Utah, you wouldn't necessarily think that, but Utah is really founded in beekeeping, and that's like a lot of their heritage and everything up there. But apparently it's not. It's over there in that Georgia, South Carolina area. There's a
Yeah,
huge.
Georgia would have been my guess for third.
Yeah.
And this is like number of hobbyist beekeepers or number of colonies. What was the stat?
That was literally just the number of members to a state association for a state.
I've pulled out numbers, and what I'm looking at is 7,000 to 9,000 registered beekeepers in Texas, compared to 4,500 to 6,000 in California, compared to 1,000 to 1,500 registered in Utah, and then about 2,000 to 3,000 registered beekeepers in South Carolina. Then for the colonies themselves, I'm looking at about 140 to 160,000 in Texas, 300 to 400,000 in California. And then I've got 30 to 50 in Utah, so a little bit smaller, and also 25 to 40,000 colonies in South Carolina. So I don't know what the source is. I just pulled up,
The other
AI.
key,
Take that Texas number and add 40%, because people here don't like registering with the government.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The
Yeah.
keyword there was registered beekeepers and registered hives. So even where I'm at, Arkansas has this interesting concept, and unfortunately, I don't think that it is. In fact, I know it's not enforced as well as it should be, but they kind of keep in mind not overpopulating or oversaturating an area. So if a beekeeper registers and they say, I've got X amount of hives at this address, it creates a bubble that nobody else is allowed to register hives within that area, so that it purposefully spaces them out. Now, I know for a fact, even we've got this tiny little beekeeper association here in town, and I say tiny, right? Because, like Travis County's old meetings and stuff, we're talking 5 to 10 people might show up every month. Tiny, tiny little beekeeper association. But I know there's at least 3 times that amount of people that actually own hives within the area of around the town and the city. So there right there shows you you're only getting a third of what's really out there.
Sure. Yeah. You guys, I have to tell you a funny story. So I was on a podcast last week, and it's a gentleman, it's another beekeeping podcast, and he's from up north, and he was saying how, I'm trying to think of how he framed it, but basically the point he was getting across was that he's been in this world, he's like not been in it a terribly long time, and he's like not come across anyone in the world of beekeeping that's like been dramatic or had like a not nice thing to say. And he was like, isn't it amazing that everyone's so nice in this community? And I was like,
Which
I
planet are you on?
said, I'm really happy you've had that experience. I really love that for you. But now the beekeeping community is awesome and strong, but it is not without its heavy drama. Every time I go to a bee school, I'm always prepared to come home to tell my husband all about the BT that I learned. You know what I mean? There was some this weekend, and I know he wanted me to be like, it's awesome. And I was like, it is awesome. But you've never been in a Facebook group and had someone like shut you down or like all caps yell at you? And he was like, no. And I said, you know what? I'm going to chalk that up to there's just so many more in Texas. Whenever you increase the population size, you're going to increase it on all fronts, right?
Yep.
They're out there. You've just not seen them yet. Listen, I'm not like hating on the Texas beekeeping community, but you know, there's some drama. There's some like groups. People start this group and that group. And I like died laughing that he was like, I've never come across anyone that's negative. And I was like, I am so excited for you.
Yeah, good. I hope that stays true as long as possible.
Hi, John.
Yeah, in fact, we said it on here, I think this season in one of our interviews, that the first time that I ever experienced that was whenever legislation stuff came up in Texas relating to the bee laws. And that was like a whole eye-opening experience, because suddenly that big happy group of people that's all there, you know, kumbaya for the same thing, was divided in half, and it was vicious. And I'm like, guys, I'm not even sure that you both understand that you're both arguing for the same thing, but you can't see that. And you're willing to like just disown people over it. It was crazy.
Entrenchments can be brutal. The politics can be brutal. It's fun though. In the end, it kind of you still kind of stay friends with a lot of people, but there is politics and there are things, drama and shenanigans and all kinds of things. It's not all flowers and butterflies, right?
Yeah, but if it is flowers and butterflies for you, more power to you.
Gave me such a chuckle.
Man, well, Tara, tell everybody out there if they want to get a hold of you, if they want to check out Two Hives, if they want to possibly pre-order a book, what ways can everybody get a hold of you? And then we'll also post a link for the pre-orders of the book and a link for the classes that you were talking about in the show description for everybody as well.
Awesome. Great. Yes. Thank you. So the best place to find us is on Instagram at Two Hives. And I'm here to remind you again, when you start a business, don't put a number in the name, because till you die, you'll be saying, spell out the two, spell out the two. So at Two Hives on Instagram. And then our website, of course, is twohiveshoney.com. As far as the book goes, its official release date is November 5th. John, the link that I will share with you has a pre-link order to order direct from us. If you order direct from us, I'll give you a code, John. How about we use Jive, and it'll save your listeners a little bit of money on the book. And it'll also, if you order direct from us, you can use that code, but it also will have a link to Amazon. If that's your preferred place to order on Amazon. You won't get it until November 5th. Everyone else pre-ordered will get it sooner. And then also has links for the UK and Canada for your listeners there, because it will be available over there as well in independent bookstores. But right now it's just on Amazon for both of those countries.
Very good. Awesome. Miss Natalie, you have any last parting thoughts there?
Nothing that I cannot ask in the second part on the Patreon side of things. I've got some questions for Tara. So yeah.
Good segue. So as Natalie mentioned, everybody, if you would like to hear more with our conversation with Tara, please join us over on Patreon. You can catch the second half of our interview there. But for now, we're going to wrap this one up, and we will say ta-ta for now, basically. We'll talk to you guys next week. Until then, everybody, be good.
And as usual, remember to be mindful.
And be joyful.
Oh, I love it.
This Hive Jive production was made possible by amazing patrons like you, and we appreciate your support. To all our Hive Jive junkies out there, you truly are the bee's knees.